Well, welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Spudcast, hosted by me, Sir Potato TV, as known as Joshua Hervey. I am here tonight to talk to you about some news and notes from this offseason, some training camp battles, which we have concluded with some of them already, and also some love hate tonight players in the early rounds, the mid rounds, and after pick 100 in your drafts. It is officially crunch time. If you have not drafted yet, you probably have them tomorrow. You probably have them Sunday. You probably have them leading up to the very first Thursday night football game. And a lot of you may have already drafted already, and maybe this love hate can help you benefit on targets to trade for and help you with that. With that being said, this is the Fantasy Football Spudcast. I do not have a special presentation today, but this video will still be going on YouTube. I will also be posting it on Spotify as soon as this episode is done. Also, the links will be below. If you go to my Twitter, actually, the links should be there. I also have the links. Sorry, pardon me. Boop, 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 boop. I do have the links that are going to be going up in chat here momentarily. But for now, the video will be YouTube. It's Potato Sports and Gaming. It's just an N in the middle there, and it's all one word. And my Twitch is Sir Potato TV. You should be able to find me. The links will be there for Spotify as well. You can actually just search up the Fantasy Football Spudcast on Spotify and find it as well. That being said, let's get started here with some news and some notes. I'm sorry about the beginning of the show, the intro. I do not have an intro yet, and I do not have an outro yet, but that is coming soon. All right, so the QB news, the big news is Deshaun Watson. We're going to start with Deshaun Watson. We're going to hammer it big real quick. We have a ruling, an official ruling, 11 games. The Browns have a bye in Week 12, and Week 13 they play Houston. What a coincidence, right? It's a $5 million fine for Watson, and yes. So that's big news. So in single quarterback leagues, unless you have a deep bench, don't target him. And if you do, make sure you draft somebody. And you don't have to draft somebody early if you want Watson. But there's a risk there. I mean, you can target guys like a Derek Carr. I think Matt Ryan's going to be okay. I think Justin Fields. There's a lot of targets in the kind of low end 1, high end 2 that might be good if you're going to pair Deshaun Watson with somebody in a single quarterback league. But you don't have to draft a quarterback early. Watson's a guy you should be able to get in later rounds if you're going to stash him on your bench all year. And if somebody did already draft him and there's a chance that he might get dropped in your league, maybe you watch out for it, and maybe week 7, week 7, 8, you go pick him up and stash him on your bench. And yeah. So we got the Deshaun Watson news. The other big news, the Seattle is not decided yet. That quarterback battle Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Let's just face it, none of these guys are really good. Drew Lock was battling, I want to say, COVID. Um, and Geno Smith was able to manage, but I don't think any of these QBs, especially in single quarterbacks, are going to be fantasy relevant. If you're doing like best ball, maybe they get drafted, but nobody really knows a starter. I think Pete Carroll wants Drew Lock to start. The problem is Geno Smith is a good leader in the locker room, so we'll have to wait and see. Um, let's go on to the Steelers. Pickett versus Trubisky. The news broke that Trubisky was going to start this preseason game, and I think Trubisky might start the beginning of the season, and Pickett might evolve into starting for the Steelers, week 4, 5, or 6, I think. Carolina traded for Baker Mayfield, and it was Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold battling for the QB1. Matt Corral, the rookie they drafted, hurt his Lisfranc. So he's going to be out for the season. But Baker Mayfield has already came out and won the job. So let's go to Atlanta is already given. Mariota is starting. About how many games is he going to be starting is the question. And then the other quarterback news is the Jets. The Jets is very enticing. Zach Wilson is hurt right now. He might not be ready week 1. Joe Flacco might get the start week 1, maybe week 2. And who knows if they go 2-3-0, who's to say they don't keep Zach Wilson on the bench? We don't know. But just keep an eye out for this as we approach up to week 1. Quarterbacks or running backs. Sorry, we already talked about quarterbacks. Running backs. This one is very interesting because there wasn't a ton of running back battles. There's a few that were big. Houston. Everybody wanted to know what was going to happen with Houston. They drafted a rookie running back, Dameon Pierce, who was highly high on. It's not a very cool thing to say, but I'm going to say it that way. Dameon Pierce was drafted. They signed Marlon Mack in free agency. They had Rex Burkhead on a contract. Right now, as it stands, Dameon Pierce has won the starting job. He's explosive. They're probably going to be doing a split backfield type of thing. So, Pierce might end up being the 60-40 ball hog towards the end of the season, but it's going to be a split, and maybe Dameon Pierce does get the first touches. But Dameon Pierce has won the starting job there. Atlanta is weird. They went out and got Damian Williams. They still have Cordero Patterson. I honestly, everybody was high on Tyler Algier, but he has been buried on the depth chart. This is something I am probably just going to avoid altogether if I had to pick one. I would if it was PPR leagues, I would probably take Cordero Patterson. I don't think I'm touching Damian Williams. He's 30 years old. He hasn't really ever done it. And if you want to avoid it altogether and hope one of your league mates drops him and somebody breaks out, like Tyler Algier, just wait for him to show up on the waiver wire, and maybe he might end up being the guy at some point. But Atlanta's going to be a bad offense, so I don't really want to touch any of it. Kansas City is a weird one. They went out and signed Ronald Jones in the offseason. CH is finally healthy for the first offseason. And they drafted a rookie in the 7th round, Isaiah Pacheco. And they still have McKinnon. McKinnon has never been able to stay healthy. CH is supposed to be the guy. and Ronald Jones might not even end up on the roster. So that being said, I guess you roster CH and hope he pans out like he was touted to do. In between the tackles, you might get the end zone look, but this Isaiah Pacheco kid might see more touches than we believe. But if you're taking a shot in the later mid to late rounds and you're doing hero RB, CH is a guy that is very intriguing. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can get it into the end zone in between the tackles. He's not very explosive, is the thing. He's kind of just meh. It could just be a volume play, and because the receivers are questioned. Nobody really knows who the receiver is going to be on that team. They might end up running the ball a little bit more. They might end up dumping the ball off a little bit more to the running backs. So that means that there's probably going to be extra volume added to the running back plate. And there was a study done by the fantasy footballers saying that depleted targets don't normally go to players who change teams. They usually go to the running backs. So, Kansas City run game is CH is a starter. Pacheco and McKinnon are probably going to be mixed in. Ronald Jones might even be off the team. New England, this one was very interesting. James White retired. It sounds like they're going to do a split 50-50 backfield with Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson is a guy I was super high on coming into this year. So it sounds like Stevenson is going to be kind of like the pass catching role, whereas Damian Harris is going to be probably the goal line back like he did last year. He had 15 touchdowns in the at the goal line. And I could see those two just blowing up this year. Seattle. This one is very, very interesting because we have Rashad Penny, who tweaked his groin. He can't stay healthy. He blew up. He was finally able to stay healthy towards the end of last year. I think it was like a 5 or 6 game stint where he was legitimately won people their fantasy football leagues because he blew up and stayed healthy. And now we have Kenneth Walker, who had they were calling it a sports hernia, but I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I thought I heard that it was just a hernia, not a sports hernia. So the status of him going into the year is in question. So we got two of these guys that were supposed to be playing for a starting running back position, and it might end up being Homer and DJ Dallas in the beginning. And it might be one of those weird things where one of these guys doesn't break out until week 5, 6, 7. I mean, Kenny Walker is very good runner, and he's probably arguably the best runner in the rookie class for running backs. So at some point, you think he is gonna win the job, right? Especially with Penny constantly getting hurt. He's already tweaked his hamstring in preseason. I think his groin, he tweaked a groin. So it's one of those weird situations where I might not just touch any of them, to be honest. And maybe you shouldn't either. Just wait for him. If you want to take a shot on Kenny Walker, bench him, put him on your bench as your 4th running back, however deep your bench is. I think that's the best case. Miami is another interesting one here. This is going to be the last team we're going to talk about with running backs, and then we'll go on to the wide receivers. Teams with wide receiver issues, or just good situations, or training camp battles, whatever you might want to say. Miami, they went out and signed Edmonds and Mostert and Sony Michel. They still have Gaskins, Ahmed, and some other players, rookies that they drafted. Let's just face it. They paid Edmonds. Edmonds is probably going to be the guy. It's probably going to be Mostert. It's probably going to be Michelle. They paid Edmonds the most as well. But I think it's going to be a committee, and somebody might not break out until this might be another situation you just avoid. And uh, I mean, as much as I like Mostert, I just don't see a lot of value in 5 or 6 touches and hopes he explodes for a monster play like he was doing in San Francisco. Um, I see Mostert getting limited touches. I see them playing all of these guys. And I see him trying to. All of them have had injury concerns, except for maybe Sony Michel, and I see Sony Michel as more as the goal line. I can't red line. Red line's not the word I'm trying to use here, chat. It's goal line. Um, Goal line work. Um, Hello, everybody in chat. If you are just joining me, we are talking about running back situations. We just got done talking about Miami. We talked about the Houston. We talked about Atlanta. We talked about Kansas City. We talked about New England. We talked about Seattle. We talked about the QB news and situations earlier as well. And now we're going to be talking about the wide receivers. So if you missed anything in this episode, you can watch my VOD. I have my VODs available for anybody that wants to go back and watch it. Otherwise, we are going to be posting it on YouTube after the show, and it will also be available on Spotify. I don't have a fancy presentation tonight, so it's just me and my big head and talking fantasy football. Um, so let's talk about the wide receivers. Um, the wide receivers are kind of interesting because we got the Green Bay Packers, who traded Devontae Adams to the Raiders, and then in return they drafted Christian Watson and Romeo Dubs. They also have Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb and Amari Rogers on the team. And there's really no starting wide receiver. It's really up in the air. We would like to think it would be Randall Cobb in the slot. Alan Lazard is the bigger guy, a red zone target, and it might be Watson, it might be Dubs. We don't really know. So Alan Lazard is the one a lot of people are targeting in drafts because he's a bigger wide receiver. He's like 6'5", and he is a trusted receiver of Aaron Rodgers. So, yes, I believe I like Aaron Rodgers this year. He's in my love list, but he's not on my love list tonight. Um, so I believe Alan Lazard is going to be the biggest beneficiary of the Devontae Adams trade. Then we go to Kansas City. This is another one. Tyreek Hill got traded to Miami Dolphins this offseason. Kansas City didn't want to pay him, and Miami did. So they went out and got MVS from the Packers. They went out and got Juju Smith-Schuster from the Steelers. And then they also went out and drafted Sky Moore. They still have McCole Harmon, who hurt himself. He might be ready for week 1. I can't remember his injury off the top of my head, but he is hurt. They got rid of Byron Pringle as well, who was on the Bears. So that being said, Juju, I listened to a podcast, and Juju was on the field almost 100% of the time in the preseason with the ones. MVS was on the field 90% of the time, so I believe those two are going to be the most fantasy relevant on that team. However, I do think the biggest beneficiary in the receiving end is going to be Travis Kelce because they already have a huge rapport, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I am a little bit higher on MVS than people think. He was running more intermediate routes as opposed to the deep X routes or the Z or whatever you want to call it in football. and people remember MVS for dropping balls. I feel like this is a very similar situation when Mike Williams came in the league. Everybody thought he had a bunch of talents. His average depth of target was like 20 plus yards, like his first season and a half. And then they decided to give him more shorter to intermediate routes where his ADOT dropped like in half and then he started becoming very productive. I feel like that's kind of going to be what's going to happen with MVS here. Where, yes, they're going to send him deep, but I think they're going to run him on shorter routes, get him the ball, and use his speed and space. Juju is a guy, he's a bigger slot guy. I think he can do it, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. His ankle injury. He is the one that's going the highest in ADP right now, and if he's gonna play 100% of the snaps, I think that's the right call. But yes. So that's that situation. What's the other situation? There's a few other situations that are kind of weird. Garrett Wilson's not starting for the Jets. He's behind Corey Davis. Elijah Moore won the starting #1 job. Other big news. Sorry. Yes. DeAndre Hopkins, Arizona Cardinals, suspended. They went out and traded for Marquise Brown from the Baltimore Ravens. Marquise Brown is a Hollywood Brown or Marquise Brown, whoever you want to call him and whatever you want to call him. Very good player. He's a smaller receiver. He's had injury history in the past, but him and Kyler Murray have ties in from college. So this is very interesting. Rondale Moore is said to be getting more targets and actually used the way he should have been used. Kingsbury came out and said, "We need to get Rondale Moore more targets, more consistent targets." So Rondale Moore could be fantasy relevant this year on your bench. I know everybody's going to be recency biased. Oh, this guy's just a Swiss Army knife. They don't do anything in fantasy football. There's a chance he might become fantasy relevant this year. And then we had AJ Brown got traded from Tennessee to the Eagles. We'll be talking about AJ Brown more in a little bit. And we'll be talking about Tennessee in a little bit. But let's just face it. This is a deal where Jalen Hurts has to prove himself in the passing game. They went out and got another receiver because they only had Devontae Smith, who was a rookie last year, who we're also going to talk about. And so this is a scenario where I love AJ Brown, the talent. I just don't know with his injuries or with Jalen Hurts if he's ever gonna reach his potential. Yeah. Let's go to Tennessee. Tennessee, they traded AJ Brown, as I just said, and they went out and signed Treylon Burks. They went and traded for Robert Woods. They also drafted Kyle Phillips, who is a big slot receiver who's already pretty much won the slot role in Tennessee. So we'll see what happens with Treylon Burks. He was having asthma issues earlier this offseason. And yeah, so we'll see how his training goes. We'll see how his career progresses. It could be one of those things where he's just gonna be very inconsistent the first year. Maybe he needs to take a year on the bench. Yeah, well, that too. They let Julio go to free agency. He was in free agency for a while. He ended up going to the Bucks. Let's talk about this Tampa Bay wide receiver. I appreciate you reminded me about the Bucks receiving core because we all know Tom Brady came back one last year, and I can't say one last year because there's a chance. I don't think Julio's on my hate list coming up that we'll be talking about, but here's the deal. They have Mike Evans, who's a star. They have Chris Godwin, who's coming back from injury a lot sooner than people anticipated. How effective he's going to be the first few weeks, nobody really knows. They went out. Tom Brady physically wanted Russell Gage on the team, so they went out and got Russell Gage. And then they recently just brought in Julio Jones as well. So here's my take. You know what? I'll save my Julio Jones take for my hate because I'm not a big fan of Julio. Let's just face it. That being said, any other wide receiver situation? I guess the only other one that's really like the Baltimore Ravens. They lost Marquise Brown, so it's back to a Mark Andrews. I wanted to say Andrew Miller. No, it is Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews. Rashad Bateman was a rookie last year from a former Minnesota Gopher. I'm a fan of any Gopher because I live in Minnesota. Rashad Bateman could arguably be better than Marquise Brown. There was a stat that I heard. Marquise Brown only caught out of 20 deep passes, Marquise Brown only caught 8 of them. Whereas Rashad Bateman, I don't know the exact numbers, and I heard the stat on a podcast, and I can't remember exactly, but Rashad Bateman, out of 9 deep targets, caught 8 of 9. So, that being said, Rashad Bateman's the number 1 receiver. Everybody thought he would be better last year, but he had an ankle injury. He kind of took a while to get to game speed, recovering from his ankle injury. But he proved to be very, very, very good. So he's their 1 this year. Mark Andrews is probably 1A. Rashad Bateman is probably 1B. Especially if their running backs don't get back in time. Gus Edwards is already on a PUP. So he's going to be out the first 4 weeks. J.K. Dobbins, I don't know about J.K. Dobbins. I don't know his status. But he's also coming off of injury. They went out and signed Mike Davis. So that whole situation in Baltimore is going to be weird. And I guess the big question mark for Baltimore is are they going back to a run-heavy team? If they have the running backs on roster to do it. Because last year they tried to, but it was very inefficient running with all these old backs. Let's talk about my love-hate. Oh, and you know what? There's one more team I want to talk about. Let's talk about the Bills too. The Bills situation is very interesting as well because they lost Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. They drafted a rookie, Khalil Shakir, and they brought in. They brought in Jamison Crowder. And they already had Isaiah McKenzie. So they brought in Crowder for super cheap, who might not even make the team. They promoted Gabriel Davis, who was on their team last year, to the number 2. They want to use him. Isaiah McKenzie basically won the slot role. And then they went out and got James Cook as well. Yes. So, Emmanuel Sanders is gone, and Cole Beasley's gone. So there's a lot of targets to be had there. Dawson Knox is still there. So let's talk about my love hates. This is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna do my love hates. I went to a website that had a list of different sites and their ADPs, and ADP means average draft position. Chat. If you didn't go back and listen to my previous episodes, I think I explained it. So in the top 50, players I don't like: Derrick Henry, Breece Hall, are my two running backs I don't like. Let's just face it. Derrick Henry is older. He's got a lot of carries under his belts. It took 30 carries to average. It took an average of 30 carries a game to get to 24, 25 points per fantasy football game last year, and then he got hurt. He was on an astronomical pace. Even if he was carrying the ball 25 times, that's like 425 carries a year, which is just ridiculous. Um, he's older. He's had a lot of carries under his belt. I just age, carries, he's gonna wear down again, and he's going at average draft position right now, eighth overall, and um, I don't like him at 8 overall. I think he needs to be in the second round. Um, Brees Hall to me is the guy that I think people are more high on the profile coming out of college as before they actually realize the actual situation. So Brees Hall is the rookie running back that the Jets drafted. The Jets went out and fixed their offensive line. Their offensive line was top 10 like the last 5 or 6 games last year of the season. The thing you don't know, though, is Brees Hall is a rookie, and as highly touted as Brees Hall is, Michael Carter is there. Michael Carter was fantastic last year. They didn't want to give this guy the ball. People think he can't carry the ball or carry a workload, even if it's a 50-50 split. Michael Carter is still there, and Brees Hall is being drafted way too high. Michael Carter's average draft position is 129 compared to Brees Hall's 42.98. So the average draft position difference, I'm taking Michael Carter at his price over Brees Hall. It is just fair and square. Brees Hall hasn't proven anything in the NFL yet. Michael Carter has. How long is it going to take for Brees Hall to get up to game speed, NFL speed? It's one of those things where I don't understand it. Wide receivers I hate in the top 50. Deebo Samuel, and I'm not a fan of AJ Brown. Let's face it, Deebo Samuel. Let's talk about Deebo Samuel. You're talking about going from Jimmy Garoppolo, who likes to dump passes, to a Trey Lance, who is a running quarterback and can sling the ball. Not to mention, you're hearing all these preseason buzz about Trey Lance connecting with Brandon Ayuk a ton. And I believe it. Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel towards the end of last year were both seeing about a 20% target share. Kittle is very, very brittle, can never stay on the field. I think there's room for both of these guys to do good. But Trey Lance is a running quarterback, and we don't know his arm strength. We don't know. Sorry, not his arm strength. We don't know how much he's going to pass. It's very similar to the Jalen Hurts thing, which it's very, very interesting. The offensive line on the 49ers is worse this year than it has been in the past. Brandon Ayuk is a deeper threat, and Trey Lance is going to be taking more shots than Jimmy G. Is there a chance that Deebo finishes at his ADP? Probably, just because he's going to be getting paid for his runs as well. But I think a lot of those runs are going to go to Trey Lance. I think a lot of the end zone touches are going to go to Trey Lance. Deebo literally hit his ceiling last year, and we don't know what his floor is other than when he gets hurt. So what is his floor with Trey Lance? What is his ceiling with Trey Lance? We don't know. Is he gonna dump the ball to Debo? Is he gonna favor Ayuk? Nobody really knows. So Debo is currently wide receiver 7 in the rankings. His average ADP is 20.9. And if I'm on Brandon Ayuk, his ADP is 86.95. So that's damn near 55 spots lower, and it's less risk for a very similar player. AJ Brown's average ADP is 30.3. This is another one of my hate in the top 50. This is the very same thing. Jalen Hurts. Let's just put it this way. Devontae Smith is AJ Brown is wide receiver 11. Devontae Smith is wide receiver 39, and Dallas Goedert is tight end 8. And Devontae Smith was no slouch last year. He's a good football player. And Jalen Hurts is a running quarterback, just like Trey Lance. I honestly believe I'm just not in on AJ Brown. I love the talent. Like I said earlier, I love the talent. I just don't know if Jalen Hurts can support 3 fantasy relevant quarterbacks or receiving options. And it could be this could be Hurts' last year as well, as an Eagle, if he doesn't prove himself as a passer. He's only a second-round draft pick. They could easily move on. They got an extra first round next year. So who's to say next year they don't draft a passing quarterback as opposed to just letting Jalen Hurts walk? But no, I don't like AJ Brown. He's had injury issues in the past. Plus the Jalen Hurts and the Eagles might run the ball a lot more. So yeah, my love in the top 50. I'm all in on Saquon Barkley, guys. I'm taking Saquon Barkley at the end of the first if I'm there. I'm reaching for him. He is the only running back. Matt Breida is the backup. And you can say what you want. His injuries have been very fluky. They don't tie into each other. They're all rolling an ankle. They're the ACL. It's been 2 years since his ACL, anyways. And let's just face it, Daniel Jones is bad. They're going to rely on the run game. They didn't really bring in any other weapons. They have Kadarius Toney, who we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. But Saquon Barkley, legitimately, if you draft him at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round, if you have to reach for him, if you know somebody's going to take him, he's got legitimate number 1 overall upside because he's done it before. The other guy I like is Cam Akers. I think Cam Akers needs to be a little bit higher. I know Sean McVay came out and said they want to run more of a 50-50 split. But Cam Akers, his rookie season, before he legitimately carried the Rams, before, and he carried the Rams in the playoffs. He was just a stud. Like, if you really think Darrell Henderson is worth anything in fantasy football, I mean, he's worth something in fantasy football because it's going to be a split backfield. But if you really think that Darrell Henderson is the better running back of the two, then I don't know. Let's just face it. I love Cam Akers this year. He's going to see some red zone love. I think there's regression with Stafford. Cooper Kupp had 20-plus touchdowns, and that's not going to happen this year. They only had Darrell Henderson last year. They didn't really have anybody else. They had to trade for Sony Michel when Cam Akers went down. It was very inefficient running, and Cam Akers brings the total opposite, explosiveness. And people are hating on Cam Akers because he came back early and he didn't look good with his ankle, and he just came back so fast that he didn't look good and people are hating on it. Well, let's face it, Christian McCaffrey's not getting discounted because he came back and looked terrible. Saquon Barkley, like Travis Etienne, didn't play last year because he had a list spring surgery, and people are super high on him. Why aren't you high on Cam Akers? He actually did it. We don't know what Travis Etienne is. That being said, I'm taking Cam Akers. Guys I love, wide receivers I love in the top 50. Michael Pittman Jr. and Cortland Sutton. I loved Michael Pittman ever since he came out of college. If I remember, Phillip Rivers, when he was in training camp, compared Pittman to Vincent Jackson. He's got that alpha male, alpha 1 receiver in him, and he is going to be a beast. He did it last year. If it wasn't for Wentz sucking it up, he could have done a lot better last year. I think he was on pace to be legitimately like a low-end wide receiver 1 last year, and then they started running the ball with Jonathan Taylor, and they forced Wentz to throw very little. Cortland Sutton it's as full as he's been off his ACL for 2 years, and this is something common in football, where when you tear your ACL, it takes sometimes people 2 full years to recover, and gain your confidence back. Here, you have an upgrade at the quarterback situation. You have a receiver that is legitimately has the traits to be an alpha receiver, and you're talking about a Russell Wilson who is accurate, deep ball thrower, and you're talking about Russell Wilson who is efficient. Like, this guy was throwing 20 for 25, 250 yards, and 2 touchdowns, like, consistently. Like, he is an efficient, accurate passer. He buys time. He finds his open guy. Cortland Sutton is one of those guys that is going to benefit from Russell Wilson wholeheartedly. If he finishes inside the top 16 at receiver, it would not shock me at all. If he finished at a low end 1, it wouldn't shock me at all either. Russell Wilson, as long as he's been quarterback, has supported a top 20 wide receiver. And Cortland Sutton fills this guy's role. Let's go on to the players from 50 to 51 to 100 in ADP. Josh Jacobs, I don't like. This is just a pure. I think the Raiders are gonna pass more than they think. They brought in Devontae Adams. They didn't re-sign Josh Jacobs either, so they aren't committed to him this year, or at least next year. And he's not explosive. They drafted Zamir White, who is explosive, and they just let go of Kenyon Drake. I'm not a fan of Josh Jacobs. Let's just face it. Antonio Gibson is the biggest faller this offseason with the addition of Brian Robinson. And Antonio Gibson has literally been he's had fumble issues with Ron Rivera. This guy is talented. This guy is very, very talented. But let's just be real here. Like, Ron Rivera is an old-minded coach. If you fumble the ball, you're losing your opportunity. And as much as I love Antonio Gibson, I think he needs to be on a different team to be successful, to be what everybody wants him to be, because they aren't using him in the passing game. He was a wide receiver when he came out in college, and he's a running back now, and I can't believe that he's fallen this far. Should I trade Montgomery and A.J. Brown for Swift and DJ Moore? Is it a dynasty league? We got a question here in chat. Should I trade Montgomery and A.J. Brown for Swift and DJ Moore? I say yes. You're getting two younger players in Swift and DJ Moore. I assume that's David Montgomery. It's a redraft league. I still think DJ Swift. Yes, I'm doing this trade. I'm still doing this trade regardless. Here's why. Um, DeAndre Swift legitimately has running back top 5 upside, which David Montgomery does not have. I just got done talking about AJ Brown and how I don't think he's a very talented player, don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's going to be successful on the Eagles. And DJ Moore has done it with bad quarterbacks forever. And I know people think that DJ Moore is going to be better. Some people think he's going to be worse. But even if he finishes as a wide receiver 16, 17, 18, which he has done every year in his career, you're getting that consistency plus a top 5 potential running back, as opposed to David Montgomery, who I'm doing this trade. David Montgomery, the Bears' offense is so bad. David Montgomery's efficiency has declined the last 2 years. I'm doing this trade 100% of the time. Let's get back to players I hate. 51 to 100. We talked about Josh Jacobs and Antonio Gibson. I do not like. Amari Cooper and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't like either. Amari Cooper's ADP right now is 79.47. I think this is more of a hate because Watson is going to be suspended for 11 games. They have a bye in week 12. So week 13 is going to be the day. Is going to be the week. And it's not that I don't trust Brissett. It's just I don't like Cooper. I don't think Cooper is very good. And there's really nobody else to throw the ball to except for David Njoku on that team. And they're going to be run heavy. DK Metcalf for Dameon Pierce. No. Unless you need a running back, I don't think I'm doing it. As much as I love Dameon Pierce, bangers, I am not doing that trade at all. I was down on Metcalf. Let's just face it. And I think Metcalf is fine in Seattle. I kind of projected him for about 1,200 yards and like 10 touchdowns. And that was just based on a short sample size of Russell Wilson being gone for 4 games last year. And so I think you need to keep DK Metcalf. Dameon Pierce, we're going to talk about Dameon Pierce here. I kind of talked about him a little bit already, but Dameon Pierce is won the starting job essentially. If you're getting Michael Carter and Dameon Pierce, oh man, a 2-for-1 deal. I'm out on Breece Hall. If you weren't here a minute ago, Jared Bangers, I definitely, I'm out on Breece Hall. Like, Michael Carter did it last year. Breece Hall hasn't proved anything in the NFL yet. And Michael Carter is a good football player. And even if, God, this is tough. I think I don't want to give you the wrong information. What kind of league are you in? Is it a standard league? Is it a PPR league? Is it a half-point PPR league? What's your starting roster? Let me get this information. How many running backs can you start? You're starting Swift if you're doing that trade. It's a full point PPR. All right, if that's the case, it's really close. It's really close. You're getting 2 for 1. Who are you dropping in this situation? If you had to, if you're doing this trade, who are you dropping? I guess the real question: Godwin, Adams, Ayuk, Smith, and Tony. Oh, shit. I'll make the trade then. Why not? Here's the deal. I'm not a super fan of Breece Hall. We just talked about it. He was in my top 50. Michael Carter's legitimately going like 80 spots after him. And I already said Michael Carter is legitimately like, oh, yeah. I would trade for those running backs in a heartbeat. Dameon Pierce is going to be starter. I like Najee and Aaron Jones. I'm not super fan of James Cook, to be fair. He's in my hate, but we won't go into it. But if those are your receivers and those are your running backs, I would do this trade in a heartbeat. Amari Cooper ADP is 79.47. There's a stat where Amari Cooper in the cold only averages like 60 yards a game with Dak Prescott. That's with Dak Prescott. What is that going to be with Brissett? Amon-Ra St. Brown. This one is kind of a tricky one because you don't know. He did it. He was very successful last year, and his ADP right now is about 59, and he did it last year when all the receivers were hurt. Hawkinson was hurt. Swift was hurt for a little bit last year. Jamal Williams was hurt. Like, everybody on the team was hurt. Amon-Ra St. Brown was just the last man standing. So this is a huge question mark for me, and I just don't believe it. Is Amon-Ra St. Brown gonna demand that kind of target share again? I was kind of in on Amon-Ra St. Brown last year, and everybody started getting hurt. If I remember correctly, when people were healthy, he was averaging about 7 to 8 targets a game, which realistically is probably like 5 or 6 catches a game for 50, 60 yards, which means that Amon-Ra St. Brown is going way too high here at the ADP of 59.64. I feel like you can get similar guys for later in the draft at this current ADP. And then honorable mention in the top in the 51 to 100 range for me is DeAndre Hopkins. Let's just face it. He's old. He was injured last year. He didn't play a lot last year. And now he's suspended for 6 games, and you expect him to come back and be just ready. I am not a fan of Hopkins right here at all. 85.4. His average draft position is about 85. And honestly, I'm not touching this guy with a 10-foot pole. I don't care how talented he was or was not, or was. He's just been declining for the last couple of years. And let's face it, I'm not touching this guy. He doesn't have upside to win you your fantasy football league anymore. So, that's just my opinion. My love players that I like from range 51 ADP to 100 ADP. AJ Dillon, Tony Pollard, and honorable mention Ramondre Stevenson and Dameon Pierce is sneaking into the top 100 very slowly. AJ Dillon and Tony Pollard are very similar. AJ Dillon has standalone value I think he's going to see red zone touches. Aaron Jones is going to see red zone touches, but they're going to be more receptions in the red zone as opposed to probably in between the tackles. I mean, you're talking about a team that lost to Devontae Adams, who was like essentially the most targeted red zone player in the NFL for Aaron Rodgers last year, and now somebody's going to have to carry the ball. Somebody's going to have to take those touches, and they might slow it down and run the ball a ton. They might use their running backs a ton. They might they the running backs might be the biggest beneficiary with the absence of Devontae Adams. Um so AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones both have standalone value. You don't necessarily have to draft Aaron Jones and then draft AJ Dillon. They both have standalone value. Tony Pollard is the same way. I mean, take a look at the Cowboys. They're a high-powered offense. Their only receiver on their team right now that is semi-healthy is CeeDee Lamb. And you're talking about Gallup, who's running routes, but he's probably not going to be ready week 1. He's not on the pup, so that's good. So he can come back anytime in the first 4 games. You got Jalen Tolbert, who I think had a tweaked hamstring of some sort, who's a rookie. The only other guy on the team is Dalton Schultz, and now you're talking about an aging Ezekiel Elliott with a Tony Pollard who looked more explosive than Ezekiel Elliott playing on a torn PCL last year. And they came out today on Sleeper and said Tony Pollard's going to see some route running as a wide receiver, which means, hey, he's going to be used more. And he was very effective last year when he touched the ball. So, that being said, Tony Pollard's got some standalone value here. And I love him. His average ADP right now is 79. AJ Dillon's is 58. Ramondre Stevenson, this is the same scenario with Damian Harris. It's going to be a split backfield, 50-50. Stevenson's going to see more of the pass catching role, whereas Damian Harris is probably going to see more of the goal line work. And both of these guys are going to be very useful. And Dameon Pierce is a rookie who everybody undervalued because of his usage at Florida, and he came out and looks very good. He won the starting role very clearly, and they love him in Houston. And this is a guy that he might not win you your fantasy football league, but if you're drafting him where he's being drafted right now, his ADP is 92. Stevenson's is 84. If these guys finish in the top 24 of running back, like, that's going to help your team. Receivers I like. Gabe Davis, average ADP 55.54. I honestly love Gabe Davis a ton. It's not a recency bias either. I mean, they lost a bunch of targets. He's their number 2. It's a pass-happy offense. Josh Allen throws the ball a ton. Their running backs aren't anything on that team. I just love Gabe Davis. And Brandon Ayuk is also on this love list. Brandon Ayuk, I think a lot of this Brandon Ayuk hype is just hype to me. His average draft position right now is 86.95. And I like the fact that Trey Lance is going to sling the ball and take more chances. And part of it too is we'll see what happens with Trey Lance. But last year, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, I already brought this up, had the same amount of target share, about 20% towards the end of last year in like the last 4 or 5 games. So they shared the same amount exactly. So yeah. Outside the top 100, hate James Cook. I think James Cook is just a glorified another passing down back. I mean, they went out and got J.D. McKissick, who was really nothing special, to be fucking honest. And James Cook, let's face it, they didn't really pass to the running backs, and I know they want to, but Josh Allen doesn't really do that. He did it last year more than he did ever, but he doesn't really do that. It's not a part of his game. Um, and he's a rookie, and I don't think he's gonna carry the ball in between the tackle. Um, I just don't see him as much value unless you're just trying to squeeze in points because your roster is terrible and you didn't draft running backs properly. James Cook is going to be one of those guys. I don't see a ton of upside with him. J.D. McKissick. This is mostly because Carson Wentz doesn't throw the running backs. His average ADP right now is 150, and I think there's guys at 150 I'd rather take a shot at than J.D. McKissick. Julio Jones. This guy right here. Um, Average ADP 144.29. Let's just talk about a little bit about Julio here. He's aging. He doesn't get hurt. He's never been a touchdown guy. A lot of people speculated that he would be the end zone guy, but let's face it, he never was a touchdown guy in Atlanta. Why would it change in Tampa Bay? Um, so I don't see why a guy like Julio Jones is on your bench. Jahan Dotson, average ADP 141.88. This goes back to the whole Carson Wentz thing. I just don't believe in Carson Wentz. Um, Carson Wentz in his prime as an Eagle barely supported two tight ends in Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz. And if I'm not mistaken, he's never supported two receiving options on a team more than 1,000 yards apiece. So why is that going to change? And if Terry McLaurin's the guy that is being targeted the most on the team, then I think Jahan Dotson is going to disappoint you guys. So until they draft a quarterback that's going to be able to maintain that kind of workload for these guys, I don't see it happening with Carson Wentz. The situation, um, people people can say Wentz is better than Heineke. People can say that, but let's just face it, Carson Wentz is not that much better than Heineke than people realize. Um, it's one of those things where they're gonna realize real fast that Ron Rivera is right and wanting to run the ball a lot more. And that's where Antonio Gibson falls in line. That's where Brian Robinson falls in line. That's where J.D. McKissick falls in line. That's why, like, if we got to midway point of the season and Carson Wentz is getting limited passing work again, like he did in the Colts, it's because he sucks, and I could see it 100% happening again this year. Um, Outside the top 100 love for me, Michael Carter's on this list. I'm going to beat the horn so many times right now. Michael Carter, his average ADP right now is 129.5. He's going about 80 spots after Breece Hall, and let's face it, I'm not a Breece Hall guy. I love the talent, I love the profile, I love it. He hasn't done anything in the NFL yet, though. Michael Carter has, and he looked good doing it. So, have fun, Breece Hall. You got to win your job. Brian Robinson, average ADP is 128.79. This is on this list because the news about Antonio Gibson. Brian Robinson, though, there's a stat here. Alabama running backs under Nick Saban. Drafted in the top 100, which Brian Robinson was a part of, end up rushing for 1,000 yards at least one season of their career. Which means Brian Robinson has a shot to be the guy in Washington at some point. And I know it might look ugly, but Brian Robinson could end up being that guy. Kadarius Toney. Average ADP right now is 103. I think this guy needs to be higher. He has legitimately wide receiver 1 upside. It was a very short sample size last year. He is so explosive. He is so good. And I think people are very scared on such a short sample. Legitimately needs to be on your roster at the end of your bench, on your bench, because he could legitimately be a league-winning wide receiver at this point of your draft. He is so explosive last year that it could happen again. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, his average draft position is 130.82. Just hate me now, that's fine. I think I'm taking the shot on this guy because Juju is going around pick 60, and MVS Juju's was more talented. MVS is here because if he's the number 2 on a team, which, let's face it, the number 2, if Juju's the 1 and Kelsey's the starting tight end, there really hasn't been a relevant number 2 wide receiver on Kansas City Chiefs. So maybe it's irrelevant. But they paid MVS for 3 years, which means they like the guy, and they're going to use him in a way which might be productive and might make him fantasy relevant. If he's at the end of your bench and he does nothing, then drop him. You'll be fine. It's not going to hurt you at this late of the draft. And he's going at 130. It's legitimately a bench spot. If he does anything, great. If he doesn't do anything, then drop him. But I think he's on a high-powered team with a good quarterback, and I think he's going to be more than just that deep threat. I think he's going to see intermediate routes. I think he's going to take that next step with those intermediate routes too, and he's going to be on the field most of the time. So, with that being said, I honestly think Marquez Valdez-Scantling has a shot to legitimately wide receiver 3 to flex every week. I don't know if there's wide receiver 2 upside here, like Kadarius Toney, or wide receiver 1 upside like Kadarius Toney, but MVS needs to take a look just because he was signed for multiple years. You know, I'm okay with it. If you like Pearson Carter, and you think you need more running back depth, I think this is fine. I like Pearson Carter over Pacheco. 100%. The problem is I think I'm only doing this trade if you only give up. Oh, you're probably. Oh, okay. I think I'm okay with it. You have the receiver depth. You have Adams, Ayuk, Smith, Toney. You have Swift, DJ Moore. I think, how many people are in this league? How'd you get this kind of roster? Jeez. Honestly, I might do it. It's a different league. I think I do it. So we are talking with a chatter right now. For those of you listening in, asking a trade question. He's giving me the details right now of the trade and his team and what it looks like. He was offered Damian Pierce and Michael Carter for DK Metcalf and Pacheco. He's got Kyler Murray, Adams, DK, Godwin, Ayuk, Smith, Tony, Najee, Aaron Jones, and James Cook. Pacheco. You know what? With your team, how many wide receivers do you have to start? I think I'm keeping DK. I honestly think I'm keeping DK. As much as I'm super high on Damian Pierce and I'm a little bit higher on consensus than Carter, I honestly think I keep DK Metcalf here. Now that I'm thinking about it, you got to start 3. Yeah, I think, especially because we don't know how good Godwin is going to be at the start of the season, I think you got to keep DK Metcalf. Running backs are very vulnerable, and now that I see your team, I think you're keeping DK Metcalf here 100%. I'm a Vikings fan. No. No, not at all. I personally would try to trade straight up Ayuk or Smith, or even maybe you trade Tony straight up for Damian Pierce. They're about the same ADP, and they're both could be like kind of league winners. Could you do like a 1-for-1 for Damian Pierce? Well, that guy is high. Yeah, I don't know. I'll trade you Pikachu for Snorlax. I love Snorlax. You can't have Snorlax. Snorlax is my favorite Pokemon, Millie. But no. So that was a fantasy football podcast. Jer Bear, do you have a Discord? We can message in Discord if you want. Or you could DM me on Twitter. And we could talk about more in depth if you really want some help. Let's see here. Let's go to my socials here. Here's my Twitter right here. And here's my Discord link if you want to hop in my Discord and DM me personally. Also, yeah, that's how you can contact me personally. That being said, I went a little bit longer than I like to on these episodes. An hour and 15 minutes, and I definitely apologize. We had some chat interaction today. I appreciate everybody who stopped in. We're going to call it for the night. If you have any questions, like I said, you can DM me on Twitter, sirpotato_TV on Twitter. Otherwise, I can share my Discord link. For those of you who don't know what Discord is, it is a platform for nerds like me, gamers, IT people. It is essentially like a I don't know how to explain it. It's just a forum, essentially. Not really a forum. It's like a chat. for all sorts of different kinds of things. There's you can get like support for programs. You can get it's just a chat. It's a support. You can do just about anything in Discord. Um, I appreciate everybody stopping in tonight. And once again, these shows will be on my YouTube. My YouTube is Potato Sports and Gaming. Um, the N, it's just an N. It's not and, so it's just an N. And it's got a picture of a couple potatoes with some things with it. Also, this will also be on Spotify for those of you who listen to podcasts, especially since this one doesn't actually have a presentation with it. It might be kind of nice to just listen. I will hope to see you guys again next week. We will talk about. Well, next week is gonna be really close to week one. We'll talk about some week one love hate. We'll talk about some of the matchups we like, and maybe there will be some more information on who is actually starting for some of these teams like Seattle. So everybody, you have a good night, a good evening, whatever it might be, wherever you are in the world. Have a great day.